Hollywood's golden age was built on perfect heroes and beautiful heroines, but the reality was far messier. For every star who shone bright, there was another one battling personal demons in the shadows, often with dangerous substances. We're diving into the real-life dramas that were more intense than any movie plot. You'll be stunned to learn about the starlet whose own studio pushed her towards a dangerous habit. 1. Judy Garland. When you think of the tragic side of old Hollywood, it's hard not to think of Judy Garland. Her story is one of the most heartbreaking. From the moment she stepped onto the MGM lot as a young girl, the studio micromanaged her entire existence. Garland had a voice that could move you to tears, and an acting talent that was raw and real. But studio boss Louis B. Mayer, one of the most powerful men in Hollywood, was relentlessly cruel about her looks. He and other executives body-shamed her constantly, nicknaming her "My Little Hunchback" because she wasn't as tall and slender as other starlets. To force her to stay thin, the studio put her on an insane diet that was basically just chicken soup, black coffee, and endless cigarettes to kill her appetite. But the worst part, the part that truly set her on a dark path, was the pill regimen. It was standard studio practice. To get her through grueling 18-hour workdays, they gave her amphetamines, they called them. Then, when the day was over and she was too wired to rest, they gave her barbiturates and other heavy sleeping pills to knock her out. This vicious, studio-mandated cycle of uppers and downers started when she was a teenager making beloved classics like The Wizard of Oz. Can you imagine being just a kid and being told by adults that you had to take these pills to do your job? She was essentially programmed for dependency before she was even old enough to understand the danger. This forced habit became a lifelong battle. Her substance use made her notoriously unreliable on film sets. She would show up hours late or not at all. She struggled to remember her lines and would have emotional outbursts that halted production. This wasn't a diva throwing a fit. This was a woman in deep, deep pain. Her struggles with pills and alcohol led to her being fired from multiple films, including Annie Get Your Gun. Though she had several incredible comebacks, her reputation for being difficult made studios hesitant to hire her. The immense talent was always there, but the shadow of her dependency, a problem that began in her childhood at the hands of the studio, followed her for the rest of her short, tragic life. 2. Errol Flynn. Errol Flynn wasn't just an actor, he was an adventure. In the 1930s and 40s, he was the ultimate swashbuckling hero. With his athletic grace, a mischievous twinkle in his eye, and that devil-may-care grin, he defined excitement in movies like The Adventures of Robin Hood and Captain Blood. On-screen, he was the hero who always won. Off-screen, he was a man driven by a legendary thirst for alcohol and non-stop partying. Flynn famously said he wanted to live the first half of my life. He certainly tried to cram as much as possible into it, and drinking was at the center of it all. His alcoholism wasn't just a rumor, it was a well-known fact in Hollywood. He favored vodka because he believed, incorrectly, that no one could smell it on his breath. He would stash bottles all over the set and drink heavily between takes. Co-stars like Olivia de Havilland often had to act in romantic scenes with a partner who was visibly intoxicated. He owned a large yacht called the Zaka, which became famous for its wild, booze-fueled parties that would last for days. But this hard-living lifestyle came at a steep price. The constant drinking rapidly eroded his health and his famous good looks. By his early 40s, the once dashing hero looked puffy, bloated, and years older than he was. His memory, once sharp, began to fail him, making it nearly impossible to remember his lines. Directors had to resort to writing his dialogue on chalkboards placed just out of the camera's view. His body, once agile enough for daring sword fights and leaps, became slow and weak. He became a sad imitation of his former glorious self. A walking, talking cautionary tale of a man who couldn't draw the line between his on-screen fantasy life and his real-world self-destruction. 3. Veronica Lake. In the early 1940s, Veronica Lake was a phenomenon. Her signature peekaboo hairstyle, with a wave of blonde hair seductively covering one eye, was copied by millions of women. She was a massive box office draw, a mysterious and sultry femme fatale who sizzled on screen, especially in classic film noirs like This Gun for Hire and The Blue Dahlia alongside Alan Ladd. For a few short years, she was on top of the world, but her career burned out almost as quickly as it ignited, largely due to a reputation for being incredibly difficult, a problem that was made much worse by a severe battle with alcoholism. Lake was known around Hollywood for being stubborn and uncooperative with her directors and co-stars. This wasn't just creative differences, it was often outright hostility, and her heavy drinking only amplified it. Her behavior became so problematic that by 1948, Paramount Studios, the studio that had made her a star, decided she wasn't worth the trouble and chose not to renew her contract. For an actor in the studio system, this was a devastating blow. Her career immediately nosedived. She then suffered a series of personal and financial setbacks, and her drinking became even more pronounced. She vanished from the Hollywood scene almost completely. The fall from grace was shocking. In the early 1960s, a newspaper reporter discovered her working as a cocktail waitress in a hotel bar in New York City. The woman who was once one of the most famous faces in the world was now serving drinks to strangers. While this discovery led to a minor comeback on the stage and in a few low-budget films, she never came close to regaining the stardom she once had. Her immense potential and unique appeal were tragically washed away by her personal demons. 4. William Holden. For decades, William Holden was the picture of handsome, all-American charm. He was a major star from the late 1930s all the way through the 1970s, winning a Best Actor Oscar for his role in the prisoner of war drama, Stalag 17, and starring in absolute classics like Sunset Boulevard and The Bridge on the River Kwai. He had this amazing ability to seem like a regular guy, but with a cynical, world-weary edge that made him incredibly compelling. For most of his glittering career, however, Holden was hiding a serious secret. He was a deeply committed alcoholic. For many years, he was what people call a functioning alcoholic. He managed his drinking, kept it under wraps, and maintained his reputation as a top-tier professional. But as he got older, the drinking got worse and started to take over his life. He became known for disappearing on long, destructive drinking binges. One of the most famous and tragic stories from his life involves his passionate affair with the elegant Audrey Hepburn while they were filming Sabrina. Hepburn was madly in love with him and wanted to marry him and have children. The relationship came to a crushing end when Holden confessed to her that he had undergone a vasectomy years earlier and couldn't give her the family she dreamed of. The breakup reportedly devastated him and triggered one of the worst drinking spells of his life. His alcoholism was a major factor in the failure of his marriage and his growing sense of isolation in his later years. His life ended in a lonely and tragic accident. He tripped and fell in his apartment while he was heavily intoxicated, badly cutting his head on a bedside table. He was unable to call for help and bled to death. A profoundly sad end for a beloved Hollywood icon. 5. Ava Gardner. With her stunning green eyes and incredible figure, Ava Gardner was often called the world's most beautiful animal. She wasn't just pretty, she had a fiery, down-to-earth sensuality that was mesmerizing on screen in films like The Killers and Mogambo. She was famous for her fierce independence, her sharp tongue, and her incredibly turbulent personal life. which included a passionate and stormy marriage to the legendary singer Frank Sinatra. She was also a world-class drinker. For Ava, drinking wasn't a sad, hidden problem. It was part of her identity. She loved jazz clubs, all-night parties, and strong drinks. She was a true carouser. Her drinking was part of her rebellious, live-fast persona. She famously said, "I wish I had $1 for every time I was called a tramp." She could often be found out on the town with her buddies, like the author Ernest Hemingway, drinking until the sun came up. This habit started early in her career and never really stopped. While she was usually a professional on set, her hard-partying lifestyle eventually took its toll. Tired of the constant scrutiny and suffocating control of the Hollywood studio system, Gardner made a bold move. In the mid-1950s, she left Hollywood behind and moved to Spain. There, she could live life on her own terms, away from the gossip columns and judgmental studio heads. She embraced the Spanish culture of bullfighting and flamenco, and of course, continued her party-loving lifestyle with gusto. Her career went on, but the peak of her superstardom had passed, partly by her own defiant choice to live a free, and often very boozy, life far from the golden cage of Hollywood. 6. Spencer Tracy. Spencer Tracy was an actor's actor, one of the most respected performers of his generation. He won 2 Academy Awards and was known for his incredibly natural, no-nonsense acting style. He was a true giant of the screen, starring in classics like Boys Town, Adam's Rib, and Guess Who's Coming to Dinner. He also carried on a deeply devoted, decades-long secret romance with his frequent co-star, the brilliant Katharine Hepburn. What wasn't such a secret within the industry was Tracy's lifelong battle with severe, crippling alcoholism. Tracy was a classic binge drinker. He could maintain sobriety for long stretches, working diligently and upholding his reputation as the ultimate professional. But when the black dog of his depression hit, he would fall off the wagon hard. He would disappear for days or even weeks at a time, holding up in a hotel room on a destructive bender. These episodes were not pretty. He would become violent and completely wreck his surroundings, and often had to be hospitalized to recover. Throughout it all, his loyal partner, Katharine Hepburn, acted as his guardian angel. She would find him, help him through the worst of it, nurse him back to health, and make sure he was clean, sober, and ready for work when it was time to be on set. It was a painful, exhausting cycle of chaos and recovery that defined much of his private life. His studio, MGM, knew his value and went to extraordinary lengths to protect him, covering up his problem and carefully crafting a public image of a dignified, rock-solid, starin image that was often a complete fiction. 7. Lupe Velez. Known by the electrifying nickname the Mexican Spitfire, Lupe Velez was a force of nature in Hollywood from the late silent film era into the 1940s. She was a whirlwind of energy, famous for her sharp comedic timing, her explosive temper, and her passionate performances. Her personal life was just as dramatic and headline-grabbing, filled with a series of fiery romances, most famously, a long and stormy relationship with the quiet screen hero Gary Cooper. But beneath all that loud, vibrant energy was a woman struggling with profound emotional pain and insecurity. Velez was known for her extreme mood swings, which were often made much worse by her use of alcohol and likely other substances. She desperately wanted to find love and a stable family life, but she was trapped in a cycle of chaotic, unhealthy relationships. Her life story took a deeply tragic turn in 1944. She found herself pregnant with the child of a young actor named Harold Marish, who, after a brief engagement, refused to marry her. In the intensely conservative and judgmental society of the 1940s, having a child outside of marriage would have been a career-ending scandal for a star of her level. Utterly heartbroken and seeing no way out of her situation, she decided to end her life. Her passing was as dramatic as her life, becoming a sad and cautionary tale about the immense pressures placed on female stars in the Golden Age, where a single mistake could cost you everything. 8. Wallace Reed. Wallace Reed was one of Hollywood's very first superstars, a true matinee idol of the silent film era. In the late 1910s and early 1920s, he was the picture of the dashing, all-American hero, starring in dozens upon dozens of popular movies every year. He was handsome, athletic, and had a passion for the dangerous sport of auto racing. He was at the absolute top of his game when a terrible on-set accident sent his life into a tragic, irreversible spiral. In 1919, while filming on location in Oregon, Reed was badly injured in a train wreck. He suffered deep cuts and a serious head injury, but the studio needed him to finish the film on schedule. So, to help him cope with the severe pain and keep working, a studio-provided doctor started giving him morphine. This wasn't unusual at the time. It was a common, dangerous practice to keep the studio's most valuable assets, the starson, the production line, no matter the cost to their health. Reed quickly became dependent on the powerful drug. As he continued to work on film after film, the studio made sure he had a steady supply of morphine to keep him going. His use escalated dramatically. Within just a few years, his health completely collapsed. He went from being a vibrant, healthy young man to a frail, sickly shadow of his former self. He was eventually institutionalized in a sanitarium, in a desperate attempt to cure him of his dependency. But the damage was already done. His passing at the very young age of 31 became one of Hollywood's first major public scandals involving narcotics. It briefly pulled back the curtain on the dangerous, high-pressure environment that the studios created for their biggest stars. 9. John Barrymore. John Barrymore, often called the Great Profile for his handsome features, was royalty in the acting world. He was a key member of the legendary Barrymore acting dynasty and was widely considered one of the most brilliant stage and screen actors of his time. His performances in films like Grand Hotel and 20th Century are still iconic. He had it all: incredible talent, overwhelming charisma, and classic good looks. He was also cursed with a monumental, lifelong addiction to alcohol, a problem he seemed to almost embrace as part of his identity. Barrymore started drinking heavily when he was just a teenager, and his alcoholism became a central part of his public image. He was famous for his wild, drunken adventures and his witty, cynical, booze-soaked quotes. For a long time, his sheer genius as an actor managed to outshine his destructive habits. But as he got older, the decades of heavy drinking took their predictable and devastating toll. His memory was completely shattered. He could no longer remember his lines, a fatal flaw for an actor. In his later films, he became a tragic figure on set. He had to read all of his dialogue from enormous cue cards or blackboards placed all around the set, sometimes taped to the backs of his fellow actors. His co-stars would have to guide him through scenes. It was a sad, pathetic end for a man of such immense talent. He became a caricature of his former greatness, a brilliant artist whose incredible gift was completely drowned in a sea of alcohol, turning him from a revered actor into a cautionary joke about the perils of excess. 10. Frances Farmer. The story of Frances Farmer is one of the most brutal, debated, and tragic sagas in all of Hollywood history. She was a breathtakingly beautiful and fiercely intelligent actress who rose to fame in the 1930s. She was also a rebel who refused to play the Hollywood game by its rules. She was outspoken, held strong political views that were considered radical at the time, and fought against the studio's attempts to package her as just another pretty, compliant glamour girl. This defiant spirit, likely combined with an undiagnosed mental health condition, was a recipe for disaster in the rigid, conformist world of the studio system. Her behavior became increasingly erratic and unpredictable, a situation made much worse by her growing use of amphetamines and alcohol. This led to a series of ugly public incidents, including drunk driving arrests, and even a physical altercation with a studio hairdresser. Instead of getting the help and compassion she clearly needed, she was labeled as difficult and unstable. The studio, and even her own mother, had her declared mentally incompetent. What followed was a nightmare. She was institutionalized for years, subjected to the horrific conditions and brutal primitive treatments of the psychiatric system of that era. The Hollywood machine that had once built her up and profited from her talent completely turned its back on her. While some of the more sensational details of her story have been disputed over the years, there is no question that her spirit was crushed by a system that had zero tolerance for a woman who would not be controlled. Her life became a powerful and terrifying symbol of what could happen to a strong-willed individual who dared to defy the immense power of the studios. 11. Alan Ladd. Alan Ladd was a bona fide superstar in the 1940s and early 50s. Famous for his cool, tough guy roles in classic film noirs and westerns. Despite being famously short, he often had to stand on hidden boxes or in specially dug trenches to appear taller than his female co-stars. He possessed an intense, brooding screen presence that audiences loved. This made him a massive box office draw, especially when he was paired with Veronica Lake. His most legendary role was as the quiet, noble gunfighter in the 1953 masterpiece, Shane. But behind that cool, reserved, and tough on-screen persona was a man who was deeply insecure and unhappy. Ladd struggled his whole life with crippling depression and a heavy reliance on alcohol. He felt immense pressure to live up to the tough guy image he projected in his films, and was intensely self-conscious about his height and what he perceived as his limited acting range. As his stardom began to fade in the late 1950s, his drinking and his depression spiraled downwards. He became more and more reclusive, and his behavior grew erratic. His life came to a tragic and premature end in 1964, when he was found dead from what the coroner ruled an accidental mixture of alcohol and sedatives. His story is a powerful and sad reminder of the deep-seated insecurities that can torment even the most successful stars, and the dangerous paths they sometimes take to quiet their personal demons. 12. Diana Barrymore. Being the daughter of the great profile, John Barrymore, meant Diana Barrymore was born into Hollywood royalty. Like her famous father, she was blessed with natural acting talent and striking looks. And, just like her father, she was cursed with a powerful, all-consuming addiction to alcohol. She had a very promising start in Hollywood in the early 1940s, but her career and her life unraveled with shocking speed in a downward spiral of booze, emotional chaos, and public scandal. Her story is a heartbreaking example of a legacy of self-destruction being passed from one generation to the next. She courageously told her own tragic story in a brutally honest and aptly named autobiography, Too Much, Too Soon. In it, she detailed her desperate and failed attempts to find love, her series of abusive relationships, and her complete and utter inability to control her drinking. Her alcoholism wasn't the witty and charming problem her father had projected to the public. It was raw, messy, desperate, and ugly. Her heavy drinking got her fired from film roles, led to multiple arrests, and resulted in numerous hospitalizations. She lost her famous looks, blew through her inheritance, and destroyed her career in a stunningly short period of time. Her life became a grim public spectacle, a rapid and devastating fall from grace that served as a stark warning about the powerful traps of addiction, even for someone born with every advantage. 13. W.C. Fields. Have you ever seen an old black and white movie with a guy who has a big nose, a grumpy voice, and always seems to be complaining about everything? Chances are you were watching the one and only W.C. Fields. Fields was a true comedic genius of his time, a master of clever insults, sarcastic remarks, and hilarious physical comedy where he always looked like he was about to trip over his own feet. He created one of the most unforgettable characters in movie history, a pompous, grumpy man who hated kids, couldn't stand being told what to do, and was always looking for his next drink. The funny thing is, the line between the character he played on screen and the man he was in real life was super blurry. In fact, Fields kind of did that on purpose. His genuine love for gin was not just a part of his act, it was a huge part of his life and his public image. He made it his whole brand. You'll have a hard time finding a photo of him where he isn't holding a cocktail shaker or a martini glass. He built his entire career around this grumpy, drink-loving persona. Many of his most famous movie scenes were all about his character trying to pull off some crazy plan to get a drink. He openly and almost proudly told people that he drank about 2 quarts of gin every single day. Now, you might wonder, how did he get away with that on a movie set? Well, he had his tricks. Back then, there were rules against having alcohol on set, so he would carry around a big thermos. If anyone asked, he'd say it was just pineapple juice. But everyone on the crew knew the truth. That thermos was filled to the brim with gin. He even had a special suitcase that was basically a traveling bar, with hidden compartments for all his bottles. He wasn't just a drinker, he was an artist about it. For many years, this wild lifestyle didn't seem to slow him down. His comedic talent was so huge and his character was so beloved that he could get away with it. He was a top professional, always hitting his marks and delivering his lines perfectly, even if he was sipping gin all day. He was a master juggler in his youth, and that sense of timing and control seemed to apply to his career as well. But here's the thing, nobody can escape the consequences of that kind of behavior forever. It's a bill that always comes due. Decades of extreme drinking eventually caught up with him. It totally destroyed his health. His famous red nose wasn't just from makeup, it was from a skin condition made much worse by his drinking. He suffered from all sorts of serious illnesses, from stomach problems to liver disease, that ravaged his body. In the end, this comedic original, this man who made millions laugh by pretending to be a lovable grump, found his life cut short by the very thing that defined his image. His art and his personal habits were so tangled together that it's impossible to separate them. He truly lived his gimmick, right up until the very end. 14. Carol Landis. In the 1940s, during the tough years of World War II, America needed heroes and symbols of hope. She was a stunningly beautiful and wonderfully energetic actress and pinup girl. They called her the Ping Girl because she was just so full of life and bubbly personality. She was a popular movie star who became a beloved figure to soldiers all over the world. She showed an incredible dedication to the war effort. While many stars performed at home, Carol went right to the front lines. She traveled more than 100,000 miles around the globe, going to England, Africa, and the South Pacific to entertain the troops. She got very sick with malaria and other illnesses on these trips, but she kept going. To the public and to the soldiers far from home, she was the perfect all-American girl, a symbol of cheerful optimism and the life they were fighting to protect. But the happy, smiling face she showed the world was a mask. Behind it, she was hiding a whole world of pain. Her private life was a constant struggle. She was plagued by deep insecurities about her talent and her intelligence. She suffered from chronic health problems, including depression, at a time when people didn't really talk about or understand those things. More than anything in the world, she wanted to find love, get married, and have a stable family. But her love life was a painful series of disappointments and heartbreaks. She was married 4 times, with each relationship ending badly and leaving her feeling more alone. Her final and most devastating relationship was a tumultuous affair with a famous married British actor named Rex Harrison. Carol fell completely and deeply in love. She was convinced that he was the one, and truly believed that he would leave his wife to be with her. She poured all of her hopes and dreams into this one relationship. When he finally told her that he had no intention of leaving his wife and ended the affair, she was absolutely crushed. It was the final blow to a heart that had already been broken too many times. Feeling utterly hopeless and seeing no way forward, Carol Landis made a tragic choice. She used a large dose of sleeping pills, barbiturates, to end her own life. She was only 29 years old. Her story is a heartbreaking example of the immense pressure put on young actresses in that era. Their entire sense of self-worth was often tied to their careers and their ability to land a husband. The bright, beautiful, smiling image the world saw was just a fragile mask for a deep loneliness and pain that the Hollywood system was not equipped to handle, or worse, simply didn't care about. 15. Clark Gable. They didn't call him the King of Hollywood for nothing. For more than 30 years, from the 1930s to the 1960s, Clark Gable was the ultimate leading man. Think about it. From his charming, funny role in It Happened One Night to his legendary performance as the dashing Rhett Butler in Gone with the Wind, he was the definition of masculine charm, easy confidence, and rugged good looks. He was a true giant of the movie industry, a seemingly invincible icon of American cinema. He was the guy every man wanted to be, and every woman wanted to be with. But even a king has his secrets and his weaknesses, and Gable's were the standard ones for a tough guy of his time. Heavy drinking and non-stop chain smoking. Gable's drinking wasn't a hidden, shameful secret. It was just a constant part of his adult life. It was woven into the hard-living macho culture that he represented both on and off the screen. For most of his career, you could call him a highly functioning alcoholic. He could handle his liquor. He wasn't the type to cause scandals or get into public trouble. He was a complete professional. He always showed up to the set on time, he always knew his lines, and he always delivered a powerful performance. The love of his life, actress Carole Lombard, was one of the few people who could get him to slow down. But after her tragic passing in a plane crash during a war bond tour, his drinking and smoking got even heavier as he tried to cope with the overwhelming grief. Unlike many of the other troubled stars of his time, his habits didn't lead to public meltdowns or a ruined career. He remained the king. However, this lifestyle was like a ticking time bomb for his health. Think about the strain on his body. The deadly combination of decades of chain smoking, we're talking 3 or sometimes even 4 packs of cigarettes a day, and constant, heavy drinking took a severe and predictable toll on his heart and blood vessels. In 1960, he was filming a physically demanding movie called The Misfits alongside Marilyn Monroe. The role required him to do strenuous scenes in the hot Nevada desert. He insisted on doing many of his own stunts, wanting to prove he was still the same tough, athletic man he had always been. Just 2 days after filming wrapped, he suffered a massive heart attack. He was rushed to the hospital and seemed to be recovering. But 10 days later, another heart attack struck, and this time he didn't survive. He was only 59 years old. His powerful body, which had seemed so strong on the outside, had finally given out from a lifetime of strain. His story proves that even for the most successful and seemingly stable king of Hollywood, the dangerous lifestyle of that era could and did have undeniably fatal consequences.